A visionary mentor capitalist, strategic consultant, commercial, real estate, finance expert with over 4 decades of experience. He scaled the eponymous Cohen Financial from 200 million to a staggering 6 billion in originations, then an extra 35 billion with a B in servicing. He's a master of corporate recapitalization, advising some of the top firms in the industry. Founder of Dark Knight Ventures, mentor to C-suite leaders, entrepreneurs, high-performance teams, helping people accelerate growth and strategy. And beyond business, he's the author of Freedom Frameworks. He's got a second degree black belt in Tomiki Aikido, certified scuba diver, CrossFitter, licensed airline transport pilot, and would you believe, a genuine fan of James Bond. A true industry icon, a lifelong adventurer. Jack Cohen, thank you very much indeed for joining me. Welcome to the Leadership That Sells podcast, where we help you lead first and sell more with great insights and tactics from the best minds we can find. Every leader is in sales, whether you're selling products, ideas, a mission or a vision, and great sales team in particular need great sales leaders. When managers bring out the best in their teams, targets get hit on time every time without stress. But most sales leaders never learn how to lead. They wing it or they repeat bad habits and the cycle continues. Sales leaders need practical, real-world ideas that fit their busy schedules, and that's why we created the Leadership That Sells Playbook course. 9 short weeks changes your world. Check it out at the Practical Leadership Academy. And now, on with the show.
Paul, thank you. And the real James Bond, Sean Connery, none of those other fake guys either.
Frankly, Moneypenny, your plan for world domination is involving some sushi, and it's a bit whatever. Yeah. It's the only impersonation I can do. The thing is, if you can impersonate Sean Connery, you can impersonate a Russian transport submarine captain. You can impersonate your average war hero. You can impersonate anybody. It's great.
Yeah. Even the Untouchables.
Is it? He just plays him. You bring a knife. You bring a gun. That's the Chicago way. What's that? Chicago, West Glasgow, sunshine.
That's great.
He was a milkman. Did you know that? He was a milkman.
I did not. I remember that he was a bodybuilder. That's how he got picked up for the movies, I think.
That's it. He had a bit of the muscles. Mad. How did you get a pilot's license? And not just a pilot license, but an airline, like a proper commercial job.
So not to beat the James Bond thing to death, but he had a seminal moment at 10 years old when Sean Connery was in Thunderball. And in Thunderball, he had a black belt. He flew an airplane. He scuba dived, and he was this dashing, debonair kind of guy. And I kind of began my bucket list, and so hence the martial arts and the scuba diving. And I started taking flying lessons way back in 1984. And one of the things, I've never been addicted to drugs, but I can't imagine that it's any less expensive or harder to shake than aviation. And what happens is you start flying more and more complex airplanes, and it costs you more money, and you start getting more licenses. And so the highest license you can get in the United States, I assume in the world, is an airline transport pilot license. And I fly a light jet, a Citation jet at 41,000 feet, 450 miles an hour. And I fly it single pilot. Unless my wife or grandchildren are in the plane, they demand a second pilot. I don't know why, but they're not worried about me dying in the airplane. They're only worried about how do they get to the ground. So flying just became one of those things I got addicted to.
It sounds very similar to my interest in vinyl, cigars, and classic vehicles. We're attracted to them you're attracted to them by the inconvenience and the expense.
Yeah, that's true. It's funny. It's true. It's really true.
Magnificent, absolutely magnificent. Well, I gave you a summary introduction there. What did I miss out? I don't think I missed out much, because what the heck?
No, that was a great introduction. I wish my mom was alive to hear it. The interesting thing, Paul, I got 2 things out of college, only 2. An instructor once told me, never take a job where the responsibility is not commensurate with your authority. And when you look back at any point in time in your career, do you want to say that you had 1 year of experience repeated 43 times? Or did you want 43 years of experience? And I never forgot that. And, we were joking about James Bond and the various skills. But the reality is I have been addicted to acquisition of skills. I tell people if you're seeking success in any career, there's only three things you need to do. But you need to do them every day. You need to be willing to acquire skills, accumulate experiences, and develop relationships. And I think it's as simple as that. And so for me, the whole skill acquisition thing is I really do have 43 years of varied experience. And when I add to that my experience in the real world, whether it's travel or martial arts or flying or rock climbing or whatever it may be, all of those did two things for me. It altered my perspective about interacting with other people. And I also found, especially in business, people do business with interesting people. I don't know a lot of, I have IT people who come solve my problems, but I don't know a lot of people seeking out IT people to do business, unless you really know them for whatever background they're doing. And so, as an owner, an operator, an investor, as a hired gun, as just another guy trying to help others optimize their journey, that's who I am.
Hmm. Hmm. I pretty much love everything about what you just told me. One of the things that I look for when I hire people, and I try to hire people with experience, is differentiating between uh, extension and depth. So you've
Yeah, very
got
good.
somebody who's got 40 years of living the same damn day again and again, or you've got somebody with 10 years, but by goodness me, it's been 10 wild and wacky years, and they've done
Yeah,
lots of interesting things. Your definition of success is a parallel to my definition of wisdom. Because at the end of success, you have wisdom, you have something to do, you have the output of success. There's not a goal, I think, per se. If you chase the goal, you'll never get there, right? It's like saying, I'm going to try and lose 20 pounds. Well, immediately off the bat, you're a failure because you haven't lost 20 pounds. If I'm going to
right.
try and have a healthy lifestyle, inadvertently and intentionally, deliberately, I'll lose 20 pounds, right? So the success thing, I think, you're talking about acquiring new skills, accumulating experiences, and developing relationships. And my angle in that is you take the knowledge that you are exposing yourself to. So you accumulate knowledge. You then apply that knowledge in some way, shape, or form, and then you reflect upon that knowledge. But then the fourth thing, which actually was my 10-year-old son came to me and said, no, I'm missing a trick here, because he spends all of his days in classrooms in school, right? So he said, it doesn't matter because that's just in your head. That's not wise. What's the point of being wise unless you share it? And that piece rhymes with your developing relationships. So you then have to get the knowledge, try it out, reflect on what worked and what didn't, and share it. Yeah, that's what makes you wise. And I think that is a lovely corollary to, not corollary, that's what the right word, the success parallel. I like that really very much. So you talk to people, you've written this book called Freedom Frameworks, right? And of course it's available, and we'll put the link down in the bottom of this thing. So Freedom Frameworks on darkknightventures.net. Subtitle is Infinite Possibilities to Achieve Career Independence on Your Own Terms. And you're targeting ambitious professionals, which of course we all are, in their first decade of their career, which of course I am not, looking to accelerate their professional ascent. Ascent's a lovely word. That's a pilot. That's a climber's word, isn't it? See? Yeah,
Right.
you see
Right.
what you're doing
Right.
there. You're a clever man.
Right.
Clever man.
Right.
So, why the book? What drove the book? What are you all about in terms of helping people? Because evidently that's what you do. You're serving, you're helping. Why? What? Talk to me.
Well, you'll like this. Your own martial arts background. You'll like this. I've had a superhero complex, and my favorite superhero is Batman. Why? Batman has no superpowers. What is
Tortured
Batman
souls.
blessed with?
Tortured
Batman is
souls.
blessed. Right, that too. Sick dude. But he had intellectual and economic resources that he used to create tools to affix to his utility belt so that he had human leverage to help others get home safely. And I thought, what a cool metaphor for a business, a mentor capitalist business, a consulting business, Dark Knight Ventures. I'm here to help you optimize your journey by giving you tools and human leverage. And so through the years, I have, as you can tell, Paul, a little bit of an irreverent personality and attitude. I have been doing industry roundtables at conferences. I get up to 30 participants, and I facilitate a discussion in front of an audience of people, and I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth, and it all works. And I had this idea, wouldn't it be interesting to do this with young professionals? And so at one of these associations, I got a closed ballroom, no audience other than young professionals. They were between 25 and 35 years old, and I started facilitating this discussion. And what I concluded was, after doing this 4 or 5 times, that a third of their questions were about career development, work-life balance, good managers, bad managers. And I thought to myself, isn't that interesting? I joke in the real estate business, I'm a little older than you, maybe a lot older. When I graduated college, the A students went to medical school, the B students went to this new thing called investment banking, and the C students who couldn't get a job anywhere else went into the real estate business. And so our industry is well paid for transactions, not for leading, future leaders. And so I have for more than 50 years collecting these, I call them stupid human tricks, but they were really frameworks so that I could be better, faster, and more effective. I didn't think I was a world-class athlete. I was one of those grinders who just liked to compete. And I figured tools, tools, tools. So I said, can I curate these? And I sat down one day and literally inventoried 60 sound bites and frameworks and started building the book out. And then I got a writing coach, and he said, well, you have to target this to somebody. I said, what are you talking about? These are frameworks I use to manage me, to manage others, to manage teams, to manage businesses. This stuff works. He says, yeah, I don't care. You need to target it to a market. So I said, okay, my gift is to the young professionals, 25 to 35 years old. How can I create a playbook, a workbook, a resource for them to go back to, and you find tools, practice those tools, and apply those tools? So it was really all about helping the young professional who had a shitty manager and administrator on top of them have a career management playbook and a skill for self-efficacy, right? If I don't advocate for myself, who else will?
If I'm not for me, who is? But if I'm only for me, says I think by Hillel, if I'm only for me, what am I?
Yeah.
So, and the
I like
what am I piece is the service piece that you have to bring yourself. So if you are, I think, served as you are serving, if you are served and you look at that and you reflect and you say that was service, then the next step one would hope is for you yourself to internalize and say, and I must also serve, because it makes you feel good. It's actually good for your soul, apart from good for the world. So,
Yeah.
totally. Okay, so you've got 60 plus tools, frameworks, stupid human tricks, rules of thumb, programming language. Once you work out, I think that we are, somebody called us once, moist programmable robots. And you work out what the programming language is, and that you can, in fact, hack it. You can change how you behave. You can change how other people behave just by using words, concepts, ideas, reframes. I love reframing things. It's very, very powerful. Can you get what are a couple of your favorites?
Well, I think I talk about, it's funny, if you go to the gym and somebody puts on the floor for you a 100-pound dumbbell and you go try, what's easier, pulling the dumbbell or pushing it? And I think what most people will find is pulling it, right? You've never seen a horse pushing a cart. The horse pulls a cart. Yet we as human beings are buried in our current reality, our day-to-day activities. And good or bad, we're doing the best job we can to survive and prosper. How can we create pull energy? How can we begin with the end in mind? And so one of the frameworks Somebody once told me context gives meaning to content. If you and I are at the end of this and you say bow because we're in front of a virtual public audience, we would bend at the waist. But if you and I were standing at the shore at a dock and there was a beautiful boat and you said bow, I would look to the front of the boat. My point is, context gives meaning to content. Wars are fought in content. Albert Einstein said you can't solve a problem at the level at which it was created. You have to go up a level and up a level and up a level until you can find a context that allows you to do that. And so I talk about this in the book. Can you create pull energy based on an intended future that is really a byproduct of your fantasy? And whether or not you're doing annual goals and objectives, and we're going to say, okay, Paul, it's January 2025. What do you want to talk about? What are we going to celebrate in success in 2026? Don't write it. Just tell me a story. And you're going to talk about, the beautiful garden or coaching your son's soccer team or whatever it may be. And I have found if I can get people to articulate what a picture of good looks like, it creates pull energy to help them through their day-to-day. Entrepreneurs build businesses from, clients and revenues and a current problem. But how many people actually fantasize what the business would be in the future and work backwards to find the milestones that they need to get from point to point? And then is the business about them, or is it about accomplishing this success or this outcome as a team through the efforts of others? And you talked about this earlier in our conversation. What do people know the difference between source activities and outcomes? Right? I do a good job at my job, I get paid, right? You could argue that the money is the outcome, but it's really not. The money is a source activity for what I'm going to do with that money. And that breaking life down functionally like that, I think has been eye-opening for a lot of people, because we as human beings tend to complicate stuff unnecessarily. Mm-hmm. If we could kind of step back and look at it, I have found these are some of the elements that I've talked about in the book.
That's marvelous. I mean, you touch on, I think, what do people call them these days? Is the if you think it, you can achieve it, that sort of stuff, the visualizations and all that stuff. I mean, visualization is a powerful tool, it's a powerful technique. I think it was, you go to people like Norman Vincent Peale, you go to Jose Silva, you go to Dale Carnegie, all these things. These books from the 1930s that are still in print. Interview with the Devil, magnificent book. 1937 he wrote it, didn't print it until after his death because he was afraid. He was afraid of the power of it. And having read it, you say, wow, actually, yes. They don't allow his books in some US states' prisons. Yeah. Because it's such powerful stuff. And it's the idea of drifting versus intentionality. It's exactly as you say, the control that you can have, these stupid human tricks, knowing what you want and working backwards. That makes perfect sense. Okay, have you done it? Well, no. Would you try? That's that. Getting people to do these things to any degree of microscopic consistency is immensely powerful. Immensely powerful, transformative. Okay, so that's you talking about, I would say, the foundations to the Cohen method, right? What I think would be your how-to advice? What would you say? Because I do like to try and find a how-to for this. So closing the title of the podcast is Practical Leadership, How to Do a Thing, right? What would you say is that one? What's the how-to? What do you want to do?
I'm gonna give you an answer that you're gonna push back on because it's too simple. I think that people think about investing, right? They think about buying a stock or buying a piece of real estate or buying a business. Why? They have valued the future and current potential of income they'll receive, right? And so people think about that, and if they bought a house, maybe they'll invest in it and they'll improve it. Or if they bought a business, maybe they'll do some coaching and try and improve it. Why don't people recognize that their most valuable asset that they'll ever own is their own earning power? Think about it. If I'm willing to pay 20 times income, right, a five cap for a government lease on a building, what would I pay for the income stream of my ability to get paid by others to support them? And so I really believe if people can invest in themselves, cross train, educate themselves, play a long game, if they could hold in their mind that they're not looking for a $50,000 raise so that they can do blank, but rather that $50,000 raise may represent 750,000 or $1 million in self-worth. And how do they enhance, protect, and grow their earning power? You know, somebody once said, Paul, and I used to say this to one of my boys growing up, he was blessed with a lot of natural ability, but not a lot of grit. His brother was the opposite. You'd never seen a guy persevere and accomplish, but he didn't have his brother's skill set to begin with. And I used to say to him, life is super hard if you only do the easy stuff. But if you're willing to do the hard stuff, what you're going to find is life gets easier and easier. And I think people have artificial fears of failure because they rationalize their station in life. But if they, it's like, yeah, this hotel, I'll stay at this hotel, but it's a shitty hotel and, that's all I can afford, right? But would you aspire to staying at a resort instead? Can you approach your career and your capacity to earn lifetime earnings by investing in yourself to expand and bring that reality together?
So it's recognizing that over time, not even accrued, no, sorry, not even compounded, but over time, your earning potential has a quantifiable, objective value, and dialing that back to the present and saying, how did I get there?
Correct.
How did I
Correct.
invest
And
myself to get there?
yeah, and the easy example for somebody who's not usually thinking about buying income streams is the little old lady in Pasadena who's in retirement, right? She has to have a savings of blank at the end of her working career, or so that when she is no longer serving another for money, how does she live? And if you think about that, your capacity to be hired by somebody else, an employer or a customer, creates revenue for you. What are you going to do with that revenue? Are you going to invest further in yourself? Are you going to expand your skill set? Are you going to be more valuable to somebody else? And over time, part of it is putting it in savings. But why are you putting it in savings? Well, it's so that you get interest income. So can you think of your career as you're getting paid as interest income? All the investment I have made in me is creating revenue for me. How do I enhance that? How do I make myself more valuable to another? How do I get paid more because I am creating more value for somebody else? It's an interesting. I talk about this in the book. There's a guy. He's running around the UK. A guy by the name of Darren Sherlaw who had a consulting business called Sure Laws, and in it he created 20 frameworks for small business enterprises, and really brilliant in its simplicity. And one of his frameworks was assets predate income in a business, whether it's a brand, whether it's intellectual property, whether it's squatters' rights because you have a barrier, a moat in your business. These assets have to be in place before you can have income. Why can't we think of ourselves that way? If I am the most valuable asset I'll ever own, influence, and control, how do I enhance that asset to create income for me that I can capitalize on? All meanings of the double entendre there. That will provide me for freedom to do what I want with my life, personally and professionally and familially.
The wisest man is he who takes his purse and empties it into his head.
Really,
Yeah,
really, for sure.
yeah. I think it's Sulla or one of those Romans, Greeks, one of them. Yeah. You touched on something before, which I think I think it's almost the idea of embarrassment, fear of failure and embarrassment. I think there are quite clearly two emotions. There's love and there's fear. And the closer you are to fear, the harder your life is. Fear can drive and push you, but I think the love side of the equation pulls. And on that side of the equation is service. On that side of the equation is leadership. On that side is all the good stuff. And the closer you get to it, I think the nirvana of agape, whatever you want to call it, you recognize that embarrassment isn't a thing, and that there's no value in being embarrassed. It's purely a status thing. It's purely an internal thing. It's purely a personal opinion on your part. And quite frankly, it's none of your business what people think about you.
Right.
So if you can go over that, and it is something I genuinely have only realized in the last 5 or so years, as I've been trying to do stuff for myself and not hiding under somebody else's wings as a corporate slave. And I had wonderful jobs and wonderful managers and a lot of good opportunities. But it's not really giving a damn anymore. Just trying stuff out. If it goes horribly wrong, well, people have short memories. In fact, people don't have any memories at all. The person who pays most attention to what you say is you. So if you tell yourself that this doesn't matter, if I get it right, great. If I don't, great. It was Jocko Willink, I think it was, or one of those guys. He said, when something goes wrong, the first word out of your brain, swiftly followed by out of your mouth, is good. I didn't get the promotion. Good. Means we get time to get better for the next one. We didn't win that client. Good. Means we can focus on the others because they're more important. This didn't go well. Good. And pause and find out exactly why it's good. Why is it good? And if you can say good, it means you're learning.
Yeah, I love how you laid that out. In the book, I talk about somebody once told me, a coach I had once told me, all events are neutral. The only thing that's positive or negative about the event is the story you choose to tell yourself about the event.
Yeah.
So choose your stories well. And I had a colleague once say to me around this embarrassment question, you will stop worrying about what people think about you as soon as you realize how little time they actually spend doing that. Right? So it's all in our head. I talk about it in the books about dreams and demons. And we all should have our aspirations. And you're using, the good is really finding positive language around a scenario. And I think everyone has dreams. And I try and get people to think about their dreams and aspirations as pull energy, right? It's a fantasy that pulls them through. But their demons are tied to resistance. And sometimes it's their wife or their mother or their children or other people who have a vested interest in them staying exactly how they are. But somebody once told me fear is an acronym for false expectations appearing real. And a lot of people.
Oh, that's good. Say that again.
Fear, FEAR, is really false expectations appearing real. And we start to worry about an outcome that we actually have influence and control of before it happens. And so all of this fear and embarrassment or fear of embarrassment is our system protecting us, holding us back because of safety and comfort. And I think we all, if we would just be self-aware about it, could chip ourselves. Like to have a colleague like yourself hanging around somebody who typically their first response is, oh shit, I did it again. To be able to say to them, hey, that was good. Good. What are you talking about? I embarrassed. No, you learned something, right? I say bad experience largely comes from bad judgment. but a bad experience you can learn from, which will create good judgment, which will lead to a good experience. If you can have people like yourself, like you, Paul, around them that can help feed the virtuous cycle, we can change the stories we tell ourselves to free ourselves up to live our dreams and fantasies.
With bells on, I think. With absolutely. Beautiful, beautifully put. Fear is false expectations appearing real. Oh, what's the other one? Fail. First attempt is learning.
Hey, that's great. I like that one.
I know. First attempt is learning. Fail in fear. Fear of failure, fear and fear. Whoa, that's a new book. In fact, there's an entire book in that one. All right. Let's boil this down. One message. If I gave you 10,000 billboards and you could write one thing on that for the whole world, there you go. Here's your Sharpie. What are you going to say?
Well, I said it earlier, so maybe I get another at that. I really think the billboard I think should be out there is life is hard if you only do the easy stuff, and easy if you do the hard stuff. But in preparing for this, you kind of asked, is there something that I've changed about in the last few years? So maybe this is a different billboard. I think people like myself, I'm an engineer by education. I think I'm a problem solver. And I think people like me, people like you, do everything we can day to day to avoid making a mistake. Do you know, Paul, that is not the same thing as prematurely taking a problem in the future and addressing it presently. What I've learned over the last couple of years is there is a difference between doing everything you can to avoid a problem in the future and presently taking a future problem and addressing it now, maybe prematurely.
That's avoiding your heart attack by changing your diet. Even though you think a thing, that's pulling some personnel thing into the now. That's
It's every one of us have, well, those of us who are old enough to have had children, and the children have become the devil, called teenagers. You start seeing
work in process right now.
Right. But like parents look at that child and the child does something really dumb and you're going, oh my God, he's going to be in jail. He's going to be, how did this come out of my system? All that kind of stuff. Are you really, really wanting to take a future problem that hasn't happened and make an issue of it today? My son Wyatt, who I talk about in the book, who actually is going to do the audio for the audio book, was 15 years old and he did something really dumb. And I looked at him and I just am screaming at him, what the frick were you thinking? And he looked at me and he says, Dad, I'm a teenager. By definition, I wasn't thinking at all. And honest to God, I just started laughing. How do you beat that? But, when we think about, gee, I don't want to talk to my boss about a raise. Why? Well, my boss is not going to give me a raise, and then I'm going to feel I have to leave, or he's going to really tell me I'm not doing a good job, and all that kind of stuff. Should you really burn calories about that today, or should you let that play out until raises and bonuses actually happen? I'm not suggesting we don't do a pre-flight before we get in the plane to fly it, right? There are things you should do to prevent a problem from happening. But prematurely addressing a problem until the problem has fully seasoned or you have seasoned in order to meet that problem, didn't the good Lord say he gives those what they can basically handle themselves? And some of us have shittier lives than others because we're tougher. We can handle it, and as opposed to those others. So maybe there's an opportunity that Paul, you, or I will evolve into a human that can actually handle the next challenge when we're ready for it, not before.
So you're trying not to make your life harder than it already is.
Correct.
Yes, yes. I mean, you mentioned the scripture there, something like basically God's time is perfect, right? His
Yeah,
timing is perfect.
yeah,
Unfortunately, yours isn't. So
yeah,
row the damn boat and let him steer. You know,
yeah.
it's just you row, you'll steer, and you'll get to the problem in good enough time. Just don't be in a hurry. Okay, I like that. I like that. And talk about the self-awareness of your son. Wow, I'm a teenager. Well, I wasn't thinking at all. Magnificent.
Yeah, yeah.
Jack, where can we find you when we need you?
Um,
darknightventures.net, LinkedIn.
yes, yes, you can find me on LinkedIn, Jack M. Cohn, and my day job is as a managing director for a real estate lending platform in the States called Arrowmark Partners. So don't be confused when you see the label. But my website is, remember Batman, Dark Knight, two Ks, Ventures, plural, because I got a lot going on, .net, because I couldn't get the .com URL. So J Cohen, Cohen at darknightventures.com, .net.
And all the links will be in the description below. Jack Cohen, adventurer, iconoclast, all round good egg. Thank you so much indeed for joining me.
Paul, thank you.